It's garage night again, and we're starting on one of our special projects. This is Richard's, what we call his #1 bike, the BMW F650 GS that he rode to Singapore over the course of, what, 4 months, wasn't it?
4 months, yep.
Now that we've got, normally has a conventional fork front end, we're putting a KTM white power inverted fork front end on it. Taken off the wheel, we've taken off the disc, the caliper, the forks and the yokes, or the triple, what people might call the triple clamps. So these are the original BMW F650 forks, conventional forks. This is the first set of forks that we tried. These are KTM white power and they're off 640 Supermoto. Richard picked them up and we thought they were going to be absolutely perfect. We took measurements, we tried everything out on the bike, and we decided that the best way to do it would be to get the KTM triple clamps machined to accept the BMW bearing that mates with the headstock on the bike, and everything was looking great. But when we fitted it to the bike, we realised a few things. This is off a Supermoto, which is a street oriented bike. It's a dirt bike that's been converted for street riding. There's a couple of things. It's got a fat wheel on it, so the forks are spaced out quite a bit more than they might be on a dirt bike. The mounting on the bottom of here for the brake caliper is for a big 4-piston Brembo caliper, which is quite bulky, hangs down quite a way, so if you're taking the bike off-road, ground clearance becomes an issue. You're going to have, you're going to be bottom.
And the benefit of the forks is somewhat lost because you've got this giant. Hang on a second, put the wheel up. The caliper was effectively sitting down here somewhere.
But the other thing is, the disc is sitting in here somewhere. I'm exaggerating, but the disc is sitting in there somewhere. The caliper's way out here, and we had to work out some way to put a spacer in there. Even if we did use the big disc that goes on a Supermoto and the big caliper, some way to put a spacer to get with the dirt bike wheel, to get the caliper to sit in far enough to mate with the disc, and we just couldn't do it. We couldn't see a practical, aesthetically pleasing way of doing it. Richard sourced another set of forks.
Well, these are just like Pete's. These are the KTM 950 forks. A better brake caliper, which is going to fit much higher up. And the next plane of attack then is, could we just simply swap these things over? Supermoto 950, the answer was no. We discovered a number of things. As we can see, the stem on the 950 is quite a bit longer. Obviously it all need to be turned down again to take the BMW bearings, which we did for this one, if we were going to go with this. So we've taken the view, after some debate, what we're going to do is we're going to pop this one out altogether. And we're going to replace it with the one we've already done. We've worked out that the heights, we need to work the heights up from here to the top. So we want this to be exactly the same, which means that we're going to have to turn down, we feel, a part of the base of the lower clamp here in order to preserve the measurement.
When we had this machine, this was all machined as a unit. The machining was done all in a lathe. It was all put in a lathe in one piece and spun up. The measurements to make the BMW bearings fit. The measurements to make the BMW bearings fit, and also some material was taken off here to make the bearings sit lower. That's got to go through the triple clamp, that bit. Then this bit, you've got to have the bearing at a tight fit on there. Then it's got to narrow down again so that you can slide the bottom bearing on when you're assembling it, so that you can practically do that. And then when the bottom bearing gets there, it's got to be a tight, what's called an interference fit. So basically it's got to be pressed or hammered on and pressed or hammered off. That's now got the BMW bearing on it, which is a different size from KTM. And that all fits up quite nicely. And if you wanted to do a Supermoto conversion on your BMW F650 and make it a street Supermoto bike, if you had the whole front end off a KTM Supermoto, you could put it on there in a relatively straightforward fashion from what we've found.
All you need to do is machine down that stem, stick on your BMW bearings, in she goes, fits perfectly, as you can see, tighten down the top, perfect height, stick on your forks, wheel, big brakes, doesn't matter if you're on the Supermoto, you're done.
The spacing is street oriented to take a street wheel, and we're trying to put a dirt bike wheel in the middle of that, and it's just not going to work.
We also discovered when you put the handlebars, you've got the bolts come through, and of course here, as we can see, they're going to come through, unfortunately, a little bit further down, so they're going to end up somewhere down here. And they go on here, they're going to be slightly in the way, so you're going to have to play around a bit to work out how to manage that.
Yeah.
The difference on our 950 fork, they're recessed. I'm just not going to get in the same way, the same problem as we would have had if we used the Supermoto version.
This is a good illustration actually. You can see, if you just step back a bit, Pete, too, you can see the difference in spacing there. You can see how much wider these forks are set than the 950 forks. The two holes that the bolts go through to hold the ignition onto the steering stem, to the top yoke, all we had to do was get into the holes in there with a file, so ovalise the holes so that they would mate up with the holes in the top yoke. Should we talk about the wheel a little bit?
Oh, go on then, yeah.
This is Richard's. Well, this was the rim off your bike, wasn't it, Richard?
Well, no, not quite. The one I took to Singapore just had the standard BMW rim, but we were able to pick up on another day some XL rims for this bike, front and rear. So this is what this is. But it's just a standard 21 inch wheel. The BMW hub, which was in there, takes a very different spindle. There's no way that spindle is going to match up with these forks. As you can see, much bigger diameter. So we had no choice but to get a KTM hub of some description. If we were going to run the twin brakes, the twin discs, this is the wrong hub. When we originally bought it, it was for a plan to run a single disc. So we're going to stick with that for the moment. Although the 950 front end comes with a capable of taking twin discs, so you could, if you were lucky and you wanted to, you could look to get a hub, a KTM 950 style hub which could take twin discs.
Hopefully by the end of this, by the time we've done all this, people watching this will be able to walk out and know exactly what to buy and know what they're in for and what they'll have to modify.
Yeah. And I think if people were interested, you can pick up some of these parts cheaper and you can do it yourself once we've worked out a few of these problems.
So the next step is get the shaft that we've already had machined pressed out of this one, pressed out of this clamp, pressed into that clamp. Alright, let's get on with it. Cool.